I was sitting in the living room. On the TV screen, a live broadcast of the academic awards ceremony was airing, and the sound of thunderous applause filled the room as Dr. Alan Carter, my husband, stepped onto the stage to receive the most prestigious award in the field of medicine. The phone rang. It was my son sounding excited. "Mom! Dad just won another award." I ordered prime rib, his favorite. "In 3 days, when he gets back, let's all celebrate together, okay?" On screen, the ceremony continued. Alan, dressed in a suit, looked composed and confident, with a gentle smile on his face. He was 55 this year, his hair dyed black, his build still lean, the kind of calm, self-assured presence of a scholar that everyone admired. I replied to our son, and he hung up right away. Today was my birthday, but no one remembered. Not my husband, not my son. I told myself not to take it personally. This international conference happened to fall on my birthday every year. He had no other choice, and my son was buried in his research, so stressed he had no room left for special days. I reheated the leftover pasta from last night and ate in silence. After lunch, I opened Instagram and scrolled through pictures of happy families from friends. Then I saw Alan's latest post. A wave of unease swept over me. The image slowly came into focus, and in that split second, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. On my phone screen, the photo loaded, and in a small corner of the frame was a slender wrist wearing a pearl bracelet. I froze. That pearl bracelet, I knew it. The caption read, "Under the rain in Lake Tahoe, she's still as beautiful as ever." The words were deliberate, almost like a flaunt. Then a message popped up from an unknown number. "Every year, on this day, we meet again. This year, I'm divorced." I put the bracelet he gave me in college back on Happy Birthday. It was from Laura Thompson, Alan's first love. On my 50th birthday, the birthday both my husband and son forgot, yet the birthday wishes came from my husband's old flame. So it turns out, the academic conference that always clashed with my birthday for the past 20 years wasn't scheduled for the convenience of the majority, but because Laura wasn't free on any other day. Every year, on this day, they met. And this year, she's divorced. That pearl bracelet? I remembered it clearly. A CT2. Act 2. When Alan and I got engaged, he was still just a poor lecturer. My family was middle class from the suburbs of Chapel Hill, with no real influence. The day Alan came to ask for my hand, he showed up carrying nothing but a cheap bottle of wine from the supermarket near campus and a thick stack of research papers. My father flipped through the manuscript pages, then looked up and asked if I was sure. I remember nodding quickly, placing my whole life in this man's hands. At the time, I was working in the administrative office at a university, and I saw Alan often. He was tall, handsome, and had the quiet, scholarly charm that drew people in. I liked the way he stood at the lectern, his deep voice resonating through the lecture hall, and I even liked those long, slender fingers with slight calluses. I believed he had feelings for me too. There were moments in our conversations, in the way his gaze lingered a bit longer. I wasn't naive about love. I knew Alan agreed to marry me out of practicality. My family could help him gain some financial stability and give him the foundation he needed to pursue his research. But I didn't mind. I believed my love could make up for what was missing. We had a small wedding at a local church, just family and a few friends. When choosing wedding gifts, I picked the 3 cheapest items, thinking we should save money for our life together. He nodded, but I noticed his eyes lingering on a white pearl bracelet in the display case. Alan hesitated, then said someone who once helped him really liked that bracelet, and he wanted to buy it. I was stunned, but I nodded and let him buy it anyway. Later, I learned that this person who helped him wasn't a professor or mentor. It was Laura, Alan's first love from college. That so-called gratitude was just a few compliments Laura had given him when they studied together. Just that, but it was enough for Alan to chase her for years. but Laura had fallen in love with someone else, a professor in the department. That man left his wife for her, and their divorce had been a scandal on campus. I didn't know any of this until after we got married. Later, I heard from friends that Laura had moved away long ago and started a new life with her husband. I tried to forget, tried to convince myself that everything was in the past. But 20 years later, that same pearl bracelet showed up on her wrist again, in that photo by Lake Tahoe. In that moment, I understood. All those academic conferences Alan attended were actually secret rendezvous with Laura. The betrayal wasn't just a one-time mistake. It had been happening again and again for years. Act 3. It hit me all at once. The truth that, for all these years, my husband had been deceiving me. While I was waiting for him under this roof, he was smiling with Laura in another city. This time, I didn't pretend anymore. In that empty room, with dirty dishes piling up on the table, I sat in the chair facing the dizziness that made it hard to breathe. By late afternoon, I stood up, my body tired, but my mind clear. I took out pen and paper, sat down, and began calculating every amount carefully, adding and subtracting our shared savings. Then I took the bank card from the drawer. When I transferred the money, 3/4 of the account, exactly $300,000, I didn't feel guilty, I felt balanced. Alan once received a large sum from my father to fund his first research project. Back then, he called it a loan. After we got married, he never mentioned paying it back. I was simply taking back what was mine. Alan was off and away on business trips. We had lived separately long enough for me to file for divorce. I texted my best friend, a family lawyer, asking her to draft the divorce papers. She called immediately, shocked, asking if I was sure, saying Alan had just received a prestigious title, that this was the peak of his career. I simply answered, "That's his success, not mine." My friend was silent for a long time before mentioning the Instagram post. That caption had made everyone notice the implication, yet Alan didn't care how I felt. The truth was, Laura had always been the quiet nightmare pressing on my chest for years. Now that it was out in the open, I could finally breathe. I smiled, thanked her, and hung up. I took a small hammer and removed our wedding photo from the wall. In that photo, I was holding Alan's arm, smiling bright as if I had married a good man. But I hadn't known he'd already belonged to someone else in his heart. I held the hammer and struck the glass, from the corners to the center, until it shattered into pieces. I whispered to myself, saying it was over. I packed a few clothes, some jewelry my mother left me, and placed them in a small suitcase. By dusk, the familiar room felt hollow. I knew I would never come back. Hungry after a long day, I opened DoorDash and scrolled through pictures of desserts. My eyes stopped at a cherry-topped cheesecake. For years, I'd never treated myself, always saving for my son, for the house, never buying anything indulgent. I ordered the cake, opened the most expensive bottle of wine in the house, and sat by the window. I took a sip of wine, a bite of cheesecake, and the sweetness stung my eyes. I thought of the days at the university office, how much I had loved the bustle, the feeling of being useful. After we married, Alan told me to stay home, said he needed me by his side, said our son needed his mother. I believed him. And little by little, I stepped back, until I forgot who I used to be. Still, I quietly kept learning other languages through movies every night, practicing my accent alone. Alan used to laugh at me, saying it was pointless, but I was preparing, in my own way, waiting for the day he'd retire, so I could take him traveling around the world just once. I'd already gotten my passport, visas, and lists of places I dreamed of seeing. But now, I guess I'll go alone. I opened my phone and booked a flight to California. The draft of the divorce papers had arrived. I printed it using Alan's office printer. Line by line, I read it carefully, confirming every word before signing my name. Helen Grant. The name he once said sounded noble, elegant, and calm. He never understood that it was never meant to symbolize obedience. It was a reminder that I belonged to freedom, to myself. I put down the pen, watching the ink bleed into a dark trail across the paper. A chapter had closed. I called a car to the hotel near the airport. As I got in, I wondered what I was doing, 50 years old, leaving the house I'd lived in for 25 years, without a word of goodbye. At the hotel, I slept soundly, dreamless, as if my body wanted to shut off every thought. The next morning, I woke up, washed my face, and went through the airport steps one by one, checked in my luggage, got my boarding pass. A young girl with bright eyes asked if I was traveling alone. I smiled and nodded. She widened her eyes and said I was amazing. She didn't see how tightly I was gripping my ticket to California, my palm damp with sweat. Just before boarding, over the echo of announcements, a message from Alan appeared. He said the conference had been extended, that he wouldn't be home yet. I glanced at it and didn't reply. I thought to myself, he'd missed the dinner our son had planned, still daydreaming beside Lake Tahoe. At the same time, Laura's message came through too, showing off the lake view and saying Alan had invited her back to work at the university. I smirked and texted back that she should stop by my house after she's done admiring Lake Tahoe. I turned off my phone and stepped onto the plane, steadier than I'd ever been. The engines roared as I boarded, leaving the past behind. California, here I come, alone, but free. I'm going to rewrite my own story. First stop, Paris, the city of lights I'd only ever seen in late-night movies on TV. As soon as I got off the plane, I hurried to catch up with the young girl who had chatted with me back at the Chapel Hill airport. She turned around, eyes lighting up in recognition, and waited. I asked if she was traveling too, my voice carrying a bit of hope that maybe I'd found a companion. She shook her head and said she was here for school. I felt a small pang of disappointment, but she quickly introduced herself, Emily Parker. She had just arrived, but already knew quite a lot, and offered to show me around. Her face was bright, sharp, and incredibly endearing, and I couldn't help but smile back. A quiet wave of gratitude rose in me. Thank you, fate, for placing this girl in my path. Someone so young and full of energy to guide me. Suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. Of course, I agreed. Emily said she had to check into her dorm, so I pulled out my phone and booked a hotel nearby, promising to meet up the next day, and we exchanged numbers. On the shared taxi ride, Emily was cheerful, pointing things out to me as we passed. Tomorrow, let's go to Montmartre, eat crepes at the corner cafe, and watch sunset at Sacré-Cœur. Youth, so bright and warm, that even the dull ache of betrayal and the lingering headache from yesterday's wine began to dissolve into the joy of the present moment. After checking into the hotel, I got serious about planning my itinerary. Lost in thought, I barely noticed the phone ringing until it wouldn't stop. I picked up, and my son's frustrated voice blared through. Mom! Why are you just picking up? Dad's been calling you nonstop, and the food's been delivered. You need to go get it. Before I could say anything, he hung up. I looked down at my screen. Message after message from Alan flashed across it. He wanted me to send his white suit, $20,000, and the pearl from the drawer in his study. Seems like reminiscing beside Lake Tahoe with Laura came with a price, and now he needed money to impress her. I said nothing. I simply wired him the $20,000 from our remaining joint account. As for the rest, well, Paris was too far. Not much I could do. I just shook my head and let out a dry laugh. But it didn't stop there. Laura texted too. Alan looks best in white. He said he bought that pearl long ago, planned to gift it to me. Don't be mad, okay? After all, the one Alan loved first was me. You know that, right? Reading her messages, I wasn't even angry, just deeply annoyed. No need to pretend to be polite anymore. I replied simply, the divorce papers are at home. Kindly remind my husband. You should be thanking me for saving you from being labeled the mistress. Sent, finally, silence. Lately, Alan had been updating Instagram nonstop. Photos of him in that white suit giving speeches, moonlight over Lake Tahoe, some minimalist postcard. To outsiders, it probably looked like he was just enjoying some well-earned rest after a demanding academic stretch. But I knew all too well. Those third-angle shots, the gentle lighting, the romantic framing. Who else but Laura would be behind the camera? And strangely, I didn't feel angry, just amused. I looked at the comments from mutual friends, laughing quietly to myself. They had no idea. They thought he was basking in the glow of scholarship, not flaunting his old flame. Meanwhile, Emily and I had nearly eaten and played our way through all of Paris. She took so many photos of me, helped me pick out summer dresses, and cheered me on. I stood on the Alexandre III bridge, gazing at the Seine, shimmering with light. I gathered all my courage to speak French with the flower seller at Marché aux Fleurs. For the first time in my life, I rode the waves in open sea. She captured so many of my firsts, my brave, smiling moments. Each evening, I felt recharged, never wanting to leave. For years, I had only cared for family, completely forgetting myself. Now I wanted to find me again, to feel this free. Why hadn't I done it sooner? I hadn't posted on Instagram in ages, but now I wanted to share just a sliver of this joy with the world. Back at the hotel, I carefully selected 9 of the best photos. No caption, just posted them, with a quiet flutter in my chest. After my shower, I stepped out to a phone full of notifications. I thought a few likes would be nice, but instead, old friends were liking, commenting. Someone even tagged Alan. So beautiful. When did you two go on a trip? His familiar avatar popped up too. He had liked every single photo. Then came a message from him. Helen, you're in Paris. Why didn't you tell me? I scrolled past it, didn't respond. The phone rang. Alan rarely called. He preferred text. He only called when it was urgent. I used to pick up, immediately, afraid something serious had happened. But now, the time zones are different, and I don't want to answer. I don't need to. I set the phone aside, turned off the ringer, and drifted into the deepest sleep I'd had in years. My mind light as air, filled with the sparkle of Alexandre III Bridge, peonies, and Emily's laughter. Tomorrow is another day, and it belongs only to me. I didn't pick up, so Alan switched to texting. His messages grew longer and more frequent. Are you traveling alone? Who's taking those pictures of you? It's fine to go out, but can't you at least check in to let me know you're safe? Helen, when are you coming back? I need to talk to you. I didn't respond to a single one. Until the last day in Paris, when the security camera from our old Chapel Hill house suddenly sent a motion alert. I clenched my phone as I opened it. On the doorbell video, there they were, Alan and Laura, standing at the front door. Alan never cared about little things around the house. He was always away for conferences. That's why I had installed a Ring doorbell cam and a tiny hidden camera in the living room years ago. He never noticed, never asked. So now, every gesture, every shift in their expression appeared clearly on my screen. The scene was unmistakable. Before entering, they still kept a polite distance. Laura stood one step behind him, carrying a fruit basket. But once they got into the living room and saw I wasn't home, Alan's expression twisted into irritation. When he saw the shattered wedding photo, his face turned dark, eyes wide, fingers trembling as he reached for it. He picked up the divorce papers I had left on the table. There was no audio, but just from his body language and his face, I knew he was furious. And then Laura stepped closer, softly, gently, hugged him from behind, stroked his cheek, whispered something. Alan's fury faded instantly. They locked eyes like a scene out of a bad movie, and then suddenly he lunged at her. They clung to each other, tearing off clothes, not letting go for a second. Fabric landed in the same spot where the broken wedding frame had been. Finally, Alan lifted her up and carried her into the master bedroom. I quietly saved the footage. It was time to go home and finish this. As for Emily, through our chats, I'd learned she was a self-made girl, won her own scholarship, moved here on her own. She knew a bit of my story too. When we parted, she smiled, told me to be brave. My son, Ryan Carter, was still blowing up my phone, asking about my flight, messages coming nonstop. At Chapel Hill Airport, I spotted him waiting anxiously with a bouquet. I knew this was a turning point, maybe humiliating, maybe painful, but I had to face it. Ryan rushed up, face tight with worry, scolding me for leaving divorce papers behind and making a mess. He brought up his engagement to Hannah Brooks, worried her family would judge him for all this drama. I simply said I wasn't going back. Ryan got irritated and said I was overreacting, that if I went through with the divorce, I'd be in financial trouble because I had no income. I just shook my head. I didn't want to argue. I asked if he knew what his father had done. Ryan said yes, he knew. His dad was wrong. But I still needed to come home and get rid of Laura. I almost tried to explain gently, but when I saw how angry he looked, I realized there was no point. I felt something in me snap. I said, I spent my whole life caring for you, and all you're worried about is who gets what. Just say it. You're only concerned the money for your house might be affected, aren't you? Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to stop him and continued, You said I haven't had an income in years. That's true, because I gave all that time to this family, to your father, to you, to your siblings. I stepped closer. This divorce and the finances, it's between me and your father. You don't get to be in the middle. I finally let go of the anger I'd been bearing. I grabbed my suitcase from Ryan's hand and started walking toward the exit. He followed, voice a mix of panic and irritation. Mom, you're blowing this out of proportion. What am I supposed to tell Dad? He told me to pick you up. I turned back and said, I'm at the Blue Harbor Hotel. Tell your father to come meet me there. Ryan's eyes went wide, hand flailing. Blue Harbor? That place is expensive. Mom, you're being ridiculous. First a vacation, now a fancy hotel? I know cheaper places. Let me book something for you. He kept going on, more worried about the bill than anything else. I didn't argue. I got into the cab and headed straight to Blue Harbor. Just after I checked in, my phone rang. Alan's name on the screen. He probably thought sending Ryan would soften me. He miscalculated. I picked up. His voice was low, laced with accusation. Helen, what are you trying to do now? I gave him the room number and waited. Ryan and Alan arrived at the hotel. It had only been 2 weeks, yet it felt like a lifetime apart. So much had changed in those 14 days. The way Alan held the divorce agreement reminded me of the day he showed up at my parents' house with a cheap bottle of wine and a stack of research papers, asking to marry me. Now I understood. Back then, he wasn't ignorant of etiquette. He simply didn't care. The sparkle in his eyes was never for me. It was for his ambition. Alan told Ryan to wait outside. He took off his blazer and stepped in, walking with that same confident posture, eyes scanning me. Helen, what is this? Why are you playing around with something like this? Come home, and we'll pretend it never happened. I gave a cold smile. Home? Who's home? He frowned. Did Ryan tell you? Then he launched into an excuse. Laura was just temporarily staying because of work, that I had misunderstood, overreacted to a few Instagram posts. When I didn't reply, he stepped closer and patted my shoulder. I thought about it. Maybe those Instagram posts upset you, right? Staying home too long can mess with your thoughts. It's good that you went out for a bit, but now that you're back, it's time to reset. We've been together for decades. Don't cause a scene. Let's go home. I swallowed the urge to vomit and brushed off his hand. When exactly were you planning to ask her to move out? He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. Laura helped me a lot. She's not what you think. She even wished you a happy birthday. We're 50 now. Don't be childish. I sneered. You're 55, Alan. If you're going to cheat, don't bring your mistress home. Don't sleep with her in my bed. I opened my phone, hit play on the camera footage, and held it up for him to see. The screen lit up. clearly showing him and Laura, from polite distance to fondling in the living room, Laura comforting him beside the shattered wedding photo, and him ripping her shirt, the two tangled together. Alan's face instantly flushed with shame, words stumbling out. You? You were spying on me? Since when? I looked straight into his eyes. Spying? You were always away, leaving me alone and afraid. I installed the cameras a long time ago. The truth is, you never noticed. I went on bitterly. You say Laura did you a favor? That's rich. A few kind words from her when you were young are worth more than the decades I spent by your side, birthing your child, nursing you through illness, running your home. And all I get in return is this disgusting affair in my own bed? Alan stood there, exposed, speechless, fists clenched. I stepped forward. The divorce agreement I wrote is fair. I'm not changing anything. You have 1 week to move out of my house. That house was passed down from my parents. It would not be his to keep. At that, Alan lost control. Helen Grant, this is all about money, isn't it? He snapped with contempt. I worked my ass off and now you want to take my assets? I tolerated you, gave you face, and this is how you repay me? I narrowed my eyes, stepped in close. You supported me? You forget you begged me to stay home? You lived well, dressed well, ate well, never lifted a finger. I got pregnant, gave birth, raised the child, ran the house. None of that was work? I didn't stop there. I pulled out the original loan agreement, the one where my father gave him money to buy shares and get a seat in a major project. Those shares were later converted into significant power and returns. It was black and white. He still owed me. I added, my inheritance? You and Ryan spent it all? Want me to list the transactions? Alan stared at the paper, trembling. After all these years, don't you have any love left for me? I cut him off. You chose Laura. In our house. I could go public with this, but for Ryan's sake, for his reputation, I've stayed silent. My lawyer friend, who drafted the agreement, once told me, divorce is the ugliest war between two people who once loved each other. No bullets, but the air reeks of gunpowder and ice. And me, I had to strike directly. My words hit. Alan went pale. His eyes flickered with fear. If the affair became public, Laura would lose her job, and his distinguished scholar title would become a laughingstock. We left the hotel together and headed straight to the attorney's office. On the way there, Ryan and Alan broke into a heated argument. Ryan, who had admired his father his whole life, now completely lost control. Dad! Are you seriously signing the papers? Is it because of Laura? Alan turned sharply, his voice cold and cutting. This is my business. You don't get to interfere. When it came time for the actual proceedings, Alan's hands began to tremble. He hesitated, stalling. Helen, are you really willing to throw away decades of marriage? I looked straight at him and asked, when you skipped my birthday year after year to be with your lover, when you kissed her like a teenager in heat, on our bed, in our house, did you not think this day would come? Alan fell silent, then slowly signed his name. When he finished, he looked up at me, his voice filled with venom. Helen Grant, from beginning to end, you've always stood above everyone else, never once looked at yourself. Do you even know why I crossed the line with Laura that day? It was because you brought up the divorce first. You triggered me, made me lose control. He jabbed his finger toward me. But this is good. From now on, I don't have to pretend to be your husband anymore. I've always loved Laura. And you? You've never understood what love is. Decades of marriage, and all he had to say about it was 4 words. Pretending to be husband. They say breakups should be handled with grace. But if he had no shame left, I had no reason to preserve appearances. Clutching the signed agreement tightly in my pocket, I walked out of that office with my head held high. Ryan hurried after me. Mom! Wait for me. I'm going to make Dad see Laura's true colors. I've looked into it. Back then, she knew the professor she chased was married, but she went after him anyway, broke up his family, then cheated on him with a student. Got caught, and that's why she divorced. She doesn't love Dad, she just wants his money. He sounded sincere now, almost guilty, offering to take me back to the hotel. But I said no. Even though he's my son, Ryan had always idolized Alan, absorbing his obsession with status and success, cold to the core. He never truly respected me, the stay-at-home mother who quietly held the household together. This sudden loyalty wasn't about me. It was about the house money he still hoped to get. I didn't turn back. I hailed a cab and rode alone to the hotel. After one more night of rest, the next morning, I boarded another plane. My heart lighter than it had felt in years. One final farewell to the past. This time, my destination was Hawaii. I stayed in touch with Emily. After getting my permission, she started a video channel and uploaded the clips we had filmed together in California. She titled it, "The Most Beautiful Time." I thought she was referring to herself, but when I opened the video on my phone, I was stunned. Almost every scene was of me, captured through Emily's lens. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "I've come to realize that no matter the age, every woman has the right to chase freedom and joy. I truly believe this is the most beautiful chapter of your life. For the first time in years, I felt seen, as a woman finally living for herself." That video inspired me. I started sharing my new life with the world. I bought a small camera, a few editing tools, and called Emily to ask about video making. Clumsily, I followed her instructions, edited my first clip, and with a flutter in my chest, I hit upload. Simple, honest, unfiltered. The video followed my solo journey in Hawaii. A shot of me, wide-eyed with wonder, watching the coral reefs of Maui shimmer under the golden sun. I added a few clips of video calls with Emily, our laughter layered with my soft-spoken memories of past days. I never expected the comment section to flood the way it did, so many that I had to scroll for a full minute to reach the end. Turns out people did want to witness my life, most of them women, sending words of strength and deep empathy with every comment. One wrote, "You've got this." The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best is now. I smiled, thumb gliding across the screen to the next. "A wonderful woman deserves a wonderful world." Another said, "Divorce isn't the end. It's the reset button to a brand new life." I sat on the beach, the wind brushing my hair, reading line after line, until my eyes stung and my chest felt warm, as though I were being embraced by 1,000 strangers. The day I returned to Chapel Hill for the divorce hearing, I saw a familiar figure, Alan, standing alone in the hallway. He looked older, dark circles under his eyes. "Helen, you're back," he said, stepping forward to grab my suitcase. Just then, a woman rushed up and yanked his arm aside. "Aren't we here to get divorced today?" "Let's go!" It was Laura, walking with that same arrogant confidence. During the months I'd been traveling, Laura hadn't been idle. With Alan's backing, she'd secured a teaching position in his department, constantly posting on Instagram, captions like, "Working late with Professor Alan" or "Academic dinner for two." She'd even spread rumors everywhere about my divorce. But Alan wasn't as happy as she thought. Ryan had secretly investigated her and sent his father a full dossier of Laura's past. Affairs with married professors, cheating on her own husband with a student, even stealing parts of others' research to climb her way up the academic ladder. Faced with his son's evidence, Alan began to doubt her. But life has a way of twisting things further. Laura announced she was pregnant. Ryan lost it. He didn't want a half-sibling competing for inheritance. Laura clung to Alan like glue, vowing to marry him the moment my divorce was finalized. She reached her hand toward me, showing off the same pearl bracelet from years ago. I smiled faintly and stepped back. "Not necessary," I said. When the hearing ended and I turned to leave, Laura called out mockingly, "Thanks for taking care of Alan all these years." Alan immediately pulled her arm, warning her to stop. I wasn't angry. I simply smiled and replied, "No problem. Congratulations to you both. As for me, I've found freedom." Laura lifted her chin, smug. "We belong together," she said, dragging Alan along. He looked back at me, hesitation flickering across his face, but when he saw the calm, steady smile on mine, his lips pressed tight. He said nothing. Later, I posted a photo of my divorce certificate on my channel with a short caption, "It's over. The rest of my life, paid for with freedom." I thought it was just a small way to mark the day, but it resonated with so many people. Overnight, my followers shot up by the thousands. Emily messaged, thrilled, "Helen, your fan base is strong now. You could turn this into a real career." I was moved reading the comments, feeling as though thousands of strangers were standing behind me, cheering me on. I had once been unlucky, wasted my youth loving the wrong man. But at 50, by choosing a different path, I had found a new direction. I invited Emily to co-manage the channel and turn it into something bigger: travel and conversations. She agreed instantly. Everything felt alive again, full of hope. I packed up for Yellowstone. The video of me standing on the wide prairie went live, and for the first time, the channel began to earn real income. As the past faded like a distant dream, my phone buzzed. An unknown number calling. A young woman's voice, timid, came through. "I'm Hannah Brooks. I'm about to get engaged to Ryan. Could I talk to you for a moment?" Hannah invited me to her engagement with Ryan. I declined. Over the phone, the girl told me many things happening on their side. "Ryan says Professor Allen loved you most, that the divorce was just a moment of confusion." Her voice dropped. "I met Laura. She brags that she and Allen truly love each other, but Ryan investigated. She was already pregnant before they even got together. Now they're getting divorced. Everything's a mess." I didn't give an opinion. I simply told her the truth about what had happened between Allen and me. I said, "Marriage is never guaranteed, Hannah. Don't give up your career. That's how you keep your independence. The future is uncertain." Hannah thanked me, her voice soft and sincere. Having once been betrayed, once believed in promises that broke me, I wanted to warn other women. By sharing my story, I hoped to offer clarity, even strength. That's how I spoke to Hannah. And it's also why I started my video channel. My account now has steady income. For the first payout, I sent all of it to Emily. She was juggling both school and work, and I wanted her to have the means to focus on her studies. In Yellowstone, I wandered across wide-open landscapes, camera in hand, recording herds of migrating animals crossing vast grasslands, birds soaring through rustling treetops. I also captured the challenges and small joys I encountered along the way. Every uncertain step was a moment I salvaged some old, dust-covered part of my heart, cleaned it gently with peace before leaving Yellowstone. I announced during a live stream that I'd be filming the sunset. That day, the plains were serene and deep. I captured the most breathtaking sunset I'd ever seen. The sky glowed crimson. I stood there, overwhelmed by the brilliance, when suddenly I heard a voice behind me. "Helen, I finally found you." I never expected Alan to track me down by following my videos. After months apart, I barely recognized the man I once loved. His hair had turned completely white. His clothes were stained with mud. His eyes looked hollow and tired. "Helen!" he choked out, reaching his hand toward me. But when he met my cold, unreadable gaze, he slowly let it fall. I already knew what had happened. After their wedding, Alan discovered Laura had deceived him. He tried to divorce her. Laura snapped, leaked all the flirtatious messages from back when he was still married to me. She also exposed how Alan had used his position to pull strings and get her hired. Alan retaliated. The argument exploded so publicly that Laura lost her job. Alan was fired from the university. His career collapsed. I never imagined he would trace my journey here, following the digital breadcrumbs of my second life. At the rest stop, Alan sat across from me, his eyes carrying a hint of pity as he looked at me. "Helen, I know I was wrong." Are you doing okay? He asked. I looked straight into his eyes and replied calmly, I'm very happy. Alan lowered his head, pretending to be remorseful for everything he had done in the past. But I saw right through his act. He wasn't truly sorry. He was just mourning the loss of the quiet wife who stood behind him, who sacrificed everything for him. He tried to keep talking, to explain himself, but I had no desire to listen. I picked up my bag, turned my back, and walked away, leaving Alan alone beneath the crimson sky. I was no longer Helen, his wife. I was Helen, my own person. After I finished editing and posting my full video on Yellowstone, my account exploded in followers. Soon after, I received an invitation to appear on a women's interview segment. During the interview, there was one question that stood out. What message would you most want to share with all women? I sat there, reflecting on the life I'd lived. I thought of every step I'd walked, every video I had recorded along the way, and after a moment of quiet, I found my answer. I turned to the camera and said, I used to think my life had ended at 50, in a house full of shadows and lies. But when I walked away, when I left behind everything that no longer belonged to me, I found the light. Not from anyone else, but from within my own heart. I want to say this to every woman listening. No matter where you are, no matter how many storms you've walked through, you can still stand up, brush the dust off your shoulders, and keep going. I wish you strength, the kind that lets you begin again at any moment. I wish you courage, to walk proud, eyes filled with the light of your future, like a flame that never dies, guiding you through every darkness. Freedom is when you choose to live for yourself and find your way back to where you truly belong.